Hello dear learners, welcome to the class. Today's lecture is on the concept of distributive justice, a normative concept that is integrally connected with the liberty and equality, and a concept that addresses the ownership of goods in society. Students, we shall be discussing this topic under the following headings: Introduction, Justice, Meaning, Distributive Justice, Key takeaways of distributive justice, John Rawls on distributive justice, and conclusion. Introduction. Justice is the central force of all societies and is necessary to maintain order and harmony in a state. Individuals want to be treated in a fair way, which leads to social and personal well-being. A just society is based on the notion that all the members should benefit and there should be no exceptions. Justice can be distributive, procedural, harmonizing, or social. Concept of justice is as old as the political theory itself. Different interpretations are given to justice from time to time. Some writers regard justice as virtue, while others hold it for equality. Some consider it as the rule of law. Justice is primarily a concept of moral philosophy. It is an ethical concept. But since it has to be implemented by a political order, it also becomes a concept of political philosophy. So, justice is an integral part of political science, ethics, law, and philosophy, etc. Classically, justice is treated as one of the four cardinal virtues, other three being prudence, temperance, and fortitude. From Plato to John Rawls, many scholars see justice as the first virtue of society or social institutions. So students, quest for justice has been an important concern of political theory since ancient times. Different interpretations have been given from time to time to the concept of justice, right from the days of Plato to the modern times. The concept of justice is concerned with adjustment of human relations because the values which it seeks to combine are themselves necessary to an organized system of human relations. For societies to flourish securely and carrying forward all the communities, there is a need for effective collaboration of people and coordination of resources and enterprises to reach this vision. This ensemble of conditions to enhance or provide opportunities to people of a community is often termed as common good. This term is used frequently in formulating general principle of justice. Equality is treated as vital element in the fundamental notion of distributive justice. Every person of the community has an equal right of consideration when it comes to distribution. This is a moral relevance of the formal principle of justice. Treat like cases alike. Now, justice meaning. The word justice has been derived from the Latin word jus or justus, meaning rights or law, or justitia, justice meaning justness or reasonableness. Due to its multidimensionality, it is very difficult to define the concept of justice. The term justice implies the quality of being just, right, or reasonable. It is opposed to what is unjust, wrong, or unreasonable. It embodies an ideal which is akin to the absolute truth, yet it represents a dynamic idea, because our realization of that ideal and our comprehension of that absolute truth is a continuous process. Our progress in this direction depends upon the development of our social consciousness, so that what was regarded as just some centuries ago is not so regarded today. So students, justice word means something which is reasonable, something which is just, right, or acceptable, which is against unjust or wrong. And we see that justice is a dynamic concept. For example, slavery and serfdom were widely justified in ancient and medieval Europe. untouchability was justified in India a few decades ago, inferior status of women was taken for granted the world over not so long ago. Racial discrimination was justified till recently in some parts of the world. But students, these conditions are now widely regarded as unjust. Our changing outlook about these problems and changing public opinion in favor of human liberty and equality are ample proof of the dynamic character of the idea of justice. Distributive justice. A fair and just society fulfills the need of equality, fairness and proper distribution of goods, wealth and services for everyone so that the society runs smoothly. The area of moral philosophy that considers the proper distribution is known as distributive justice. It is also a type of social justice since it concerns equal access to resources and equal rights and opportunities. The economic, political and social frameworks that each society has, its laws, institutions, policies, etc., result in different distribution of benefits and burdens across members of the society. These frameworks are the result of human political process and they constantly change both across societies and within societies over time. The structure of these frameworks is important because the distributions of benefits and burdens resulting from them fundamentally affect people's lives. Arguments about which frameworks and or resulting distributions are morally preferable constitute the topic of distributive justice. Principles of distributive justice are therefore best thought of as providing moral guidance for the political processes and structures that affect the distribution of benefits and burdens in societies, and any principles which do offer this kind of moral guidance on distribution regardless of the terminology they employ should be considered principles of distributive justice. Students, the concept of distributive justice is concerned with the fair allocation of resources among the diverse members of a community. The principle says that every person should have access to approximately the same level of material goods and services. In contrast to the principle of the concept of due process, which is concerned with the equal administration of procedural and substantive law, the distributive justice focuses on equal social and economic outcomes. The principle of distributive justice is most commonly justified on the grounds that people are morally equal and that equality in material goods and services is the best way to realize this moral ideal. It might be easier to think of distributive justice as just distribution. Key takeaways of distributive justice. Distributive justice concerns the fair and equitable distribution of resources and burdens throughout a society. The principle of distributive justice says that every person should have the same level of material goods, including burdens and services. The principle is most commonly justified on the grounds that the people are morally equal and that equality in material goods and services is the best way to give effect to this moral ideal. Often contrasted with procedural justice, which is concerned with the administration of statutory law, distributive justice concentrates on social and economic outcomes. The practical application of distributive justice theory is to provide moral guidance for the allocation of resources and the distribution of benefits and burdens in a society, as well as political processes and structures that affect the allocation and distribution. The basic principle of distributive justice is that equal work should produce equal outcomes and some people should not accumulate a disproportionate amount of goods. So students, the concept of distributive justice deals with the fair and equitable distribution of all the material resources, goods, services throughout the society as well as burdens also. The concept says that every person should have the same and equal level of material goods and services. And this principle is usually justified on the grounds that people are morally equal and that equality in material goods, services is the best way to give effect to this moral ideal. Now, John Rawls on distributive justice. The most simple approach in regard to the theory of distributive justice was made by the 20th century American political philosopher John Rawls in his book A Theory of Justice and Political Liberalism, 1971. His theory of justice is one of the best known modern conceptions of distributive justice. John Rawls' theory, termed as justice as fairness, was developed as a rival to utilitarianism, a dominant theory of his times, which Rawls saw as a morally flawed theory. The flaw is that utilitarianism justifies sacrificing the good of some individuals for the sake of the happiness of the greatest number. Utilitarians believe in aggregate happiness produced by the justice and not the welfare of each individual. Rawls was inspired by Immanuel Kant's moral idea that gave due importance to equality and freedom of each human being, liberal egalitarian. Kant argued that each human being should be seen as an end in himself and not as a means to an end. Through this theory of justice, Rawls gave central place to the moral principle of equality and freedom of each individual. Students, John Rawls gave the concept of the distributive justice in his book Theory of Justice and Political Liberalism. It was the period of post Second World War. There was emergence of behavioral approach and emphasis on value neutral and fact based political concepts in political theory. Hence, normative principles and values became scarce commodity in political science during this period. It was John Rawls who brought them back to the discipline of political theory through his concept of justice. His theory of justice stood for distributive justice, that is, just distribution of primary goods in a society. John Rawls supported a contract-based theory of justice that was based on original position, that is, state of nature as envisioned by Thomas Hobbes, John Locke and J.J. Rousseau, the social contractualists, individual rationality, making a choice amongst various means for optimum result, and decision making. Rawls combined liberty and equality in his conception of distributive justice. He called justice as fairness, in opposition to the utilitarian theory of justice that dominated the Western liberal thought. Since the 19th century, Rawls tried to formulate his theory of justice after the end of Second World War. He described justice as the first virtue of social institutions and all political and legislative decisions. That is, he said that all the decisions should be based on justice to determine the distribution of primary goods in the society. Students, the basic features of Rawls' theory of justice, that is distributive justice, which he gives in his book, are justice. First, he says justice as fairness. He treats justice as a fairness concept. In his theory of justice, Rawls introduced concept of justice as fairness. He held that an adequate amount of justice cannot be derived by providing greatest happiness to the greatest number. Instead, justice is the doctrine of fairness, which consists of the two principles, that is liberty and equality. Fair equality of opportunity should be provided to all the members of the society. All people should have an equal rights and liberties. Then he introduced the concept of difference principle and the veil of ignorance. His doctrine is appropriate for the forms of government which neglects the basic rights and interests of the minority. Rawls' theory of distributive justice assumes that designated groups of responsible people in the government will establish a fair procedure for determining what constitutes a just distribution of primary goods, that is including services, freedoms, opportunities and control over resources. Primary goods, according to John Rawls, are those for which it is rational for a human being to want more rather than less. These goods, according to him, are of two types, that is natural goods and social goods. And in natural goods, he said he included goods like intelligence, health, talent that are affected by social institutions but not distributed by them. And in social goods includes income, wealth, opportunities, etc. that are directly distributed by social institutions and are affected by them directly. Now, the basic tenets of his theory are as follows. Justice as fairness. In his book, A Theory of Justice, John Rawls introduced a concept of justice as fairness. He held that an adequate amount of justice cannot be derived from the utilitarianism which promotes the greatest amount of happiness for the greatest number of people. The doctrine of justice as fairness consists of two main principles. They are liberty and equality. Equality is subdivided into fair equality of opportunity. All people should have equal individual rights and liberties. The difference principle, veil of ignorance. This doctrine is appropriate for the forms of government which neglects the basic rights and interests of the minority. Students, John Rawls outlined his classical theory of justice as fairness. He termed justice as fairness, as equity, equality, equal treatment of all the human beings. All people should have equal and equitable levels of opportunity, and attempts to mitigate economic inequalities should maximize the benefits of those who are the least advantaged sections of society. Each person should have equal rights in society and each person should get basic liberties. The rights and liberties should be compatible with all the people of the society. Liberties should be present in offices and positions in the offices. They should be open to all under the conditions of fair equality and opportunity. The basic liberties which are to be protected are the political liberties, that is liberty, right to hold any public office, right to vote, personal properties, right against arbitrary action by the government. So, the equal treatment and equitable levels of opportunity is the crux of John Rawls' concept of justice, which is he terms as fairness. Students, Rawls' fairness theory of distributive justice assumes that designated groups of responsible people will establish a fair procedure for determining what constitutes a just distribution of primary goods, including freedom, opportunities and the control over various resources. Now, he starts with a veil of ignorance. Rawls imagined a hypothetical situation consisting of a group of individuals completely unaware of their social and economic needs and ignorant of their origin, that is, the places they come from. The group of people are also ignorant of their basic needs and the requirements for a good life. Rawls termed this situation as the veil of ignorance. Situated behind this group of people cannot be influenced by self-interested desires to benefit some social groups. This will ensure fair distribution and proper allocation of resources. Students, Rawls presented a hypothetical original position in which people are behind a veil of ignorance of their place, status in society. Despite this veil of ignorance, he said the individuals will make rational choices as they are rational beings, rational decision makers, and would devise principles that would ensure the fair and equitable distribution in society. Under these conditions, Rawls claimed that people would unanimously choose a particular conception of justice. He assumed a hypothetical position in which he says that people are ignorant of their social status, ignorant of their places in the society, but since individuals are rational creatures, they will make rational choices, they will make rational decisions, and they would themselves devise the principles that would lead to the just distribution of goods and services in the society. And under these conditions, Rawls claimed that people would unanimously choose a particular course of action that would lead to the justice as a concept of fairness. Two principles. In his book A Theory of Justice and Political Liberalism, Rawls further provided a precise interpretation of his two principles of justice. According to him, each person has an equal claim to equal basic rights and liberties, including equal political liberties, which is compatible with for all. Only those liberties which are compatible for all are to be guaranteed their fair value. Social and economic inequalities should satisfy two conditions of fair equality and opportunity and the greatest benefit of the least advantaged members of society. Students, fair equality of opportunity, that is, each person should have equal rights in society and basic liberties. These rights and liberties should be compatible with all. Social and economic liberties should be distributive in society in such a way that it becomes the greatest benefit to the least advantaged sections of society. The basic liberties to be protected include political liberty, that is right to vote and hold public office, freedom of speech and assembly, right to hold personal property, right against arbitrary arrest, etc. Next is the difference principle. The difference principle is influenced by the varying nature of wealth in any economy. In any society, every individual does not own the equal amount of wealth, which leads to the difference. Hence, distributive justice should aim to balance the difference of wealth between varying individuals. Inequalities in the allocation of goods are only permissible if they are used to the benefit of least advantaged members of society. Students, in his general conception of justice, Rawls holds that social and economic advantage must be arranged to ensure greatest benefit to the least advantaged members of society. According to his so-called difference principle, to which the greatest attention has been paid in his theory, all goods are distributed equally unless an unequal distribution is to the advantage of the least favored people. Students, this John Rawls' concept of distributive justice, his theory of justice, is often referred to as justice as fairness, and it is a sort of a reaction to the utilitarian theory. It contends that social and economic advantages must be arranged to ensure greatest benefit to the least advantaged members of a society. Although this theory has been criticized by communitarians, libertarians and feminists, Rawls' theory has played a significant part in ensuring that benefits are allocated to deprived sections in liberal democracies across the globe, and India is one such example. Now, significance of this distributive justice. Distributive justice not only plays a significant role in providing a moral guidance of allocation of resources and fair distribution of goods and opportunities, but also ensures that they are performed properly by influencing the rules, regulations and policies of the government. Distributive justice gains more prominence in a society with unequal divisions of resources. The necessity of distributive justice and its various principles are also the subject matters of debates and controversies. The various principles of distributive justice, such as equity, equality, need, proportionality, contribution, responsibility, etc., besides being relevant in the context of distributive justice, also play a significant role in various issues under social justice. Irrespective of the theories behind it, the main notion of distributive justice is that fair distribution and equal treatment is a matter of giving individuals what they deserve in any civilized society and should be implemented for a better society. Students, the topic of distributive justice gained more prominence after the realization that laws and policies framed by any specific government affects the distribution of resources and opportunities, especially in terms of economic benefits and burdens. The practical application of distributive justice theory is to provide moral guidance for the allocation of resources and the distribution of benefits and burdens in a society, as well as the political processes and structures that affect the allocation and distribution. The basic principle of distributive justice is that equal work should produce equal outcomes, and some people should not accumulate a disproportionate amount of goods and wealth. Now, conclusion. The recent years have witnessed a remarkable growth in the emphasis and attention paid to the distributive effects of economic development policies. All these three principles of equity, equality and social need, which are most relevant in the context of distributive justice, are duly followed in many fields, especially in the legal field. These principles appeal to the notion that fair treatment is a matter of giving people what they deserve, regardless of the same outcome. It is much more useful if implemented on a long-term basis. Human behavior is the first target of moral assessment and righteousness. The external facts and institutions are secondary, though essential. Be it poverty, education, development, peace talks, every important aspect in today's world can be seen in the light of distributive justice. The need of today is to take significant steps to help rise and flourish our society and make it a better place to live in. So, students, we see that the concept of distributive justice had gained an important place in the modern political theory and in the world. The concept of distributive justice laid emphasis on the distributive effects of all the policies and programs of the government. The principles of equality, equity, social justice, social need are more relevant in the concept of distributive justice. These principles appeal to the notion of fair treatment of human beings, and we see that the modern world needs more of the concept of distributive justice to make the world a safer place, a better place to dwell in. So, students, in today's lecture we have discussed about the concept of distributive justice, the meaning of distributive justice, key features of the distributive justice, and the views of John Rawls on the concept of distributive justice as propounded in his theory of justice as fairness. I hope this lecture will prove beneficial to all the students. Thank you.